So will this week's attack have any negative effect on attempts to break down barriers between politicians and the public? I put that question to Ruth Fox of the Hansard Society, which sets out to strengthen parliamentary democracy, and to James Heappey, a Tory MP who just happened this week to be attending a youth parliament event in Somerset. Mr Heappey is a former army major, an expert in counterinsurgency, who was the first person on the scene at a suicide bombing outside the UN headquarters in Kabul in 2005. I started by asking him what lessons could be learned from the attack on Westminster this week.
It's interesting. I think that this attack strikes me as being fairly poorly planned. Clearly, the attacker knew the route that he would have to take to Parliament, and he'd obviously identified the carriage gates as a weakness. PC Keith Palmer is a hero because he stood his ground, but actually the attacker got no further than the man that was there to prevent him accessing the estate. Where I think that we should be more concerned is what you see in both Iraq and Afghanistan is that proper terrorist organisations who are really thinking about how to attack you and how to hurt you are looking at your patterns, they are looking at the way that you do your business, and the way that we do business in Parliament each week is quite routine. There is a real pattern to it, which means that we are easily attacked. And there is also how you react to an attack. And I think that there are probably things that we did in reaction to that attack on Wednesday in Westminster that terrorists might look at. And if we don't change some of those drills, we might find that we're very open to sort of a secondary attack, which would actually do far more damage than the first because of the way that we evacuate people around the parliamentary estate. So I found myself looking at events on Wednesday after the event through the optics of someone that had served in both Basra and in the Helmand Valley in Afghanistan and in Northern Ireland, and being quite thankful actually that this guy didn't really seem to know what he was doing. A more organised attack during a division could have actually been much more deadly.
Now, Ruth, the Hansard Society works to promote democratic engagement. Are you worried that these attacks will make Parliament less accessible to members of the public?
Yes, of course. I mean, clearly it's important that the security is reviewed, and if steps are needed to improve security, then those must be taken. But we've got to balance that with the need for Parliament to be open and accessible to those who work there. I mean, there's about 1 million people pass through the building every year, but it's also got to be open and accessible to the public because constitutionally it's the essential link, the buckle between government and citizens. And if we infringe and diminish our access to Parliament, then we're infringing on our democracy.
Is there a risk that people will be less inclined to want to come to the Houses of Parliament after this incident, or are there other ways of engaging people?
I certainly hope people won't stop coming to the building. My suspicion is they won't. Particularly what I hope we don't see is a reaction in terms of young people, because huge numbers of school groups pass through Parliament. There were some there this week when the incident took place, and it's really important, I think, that they carry on.
Now, James Heappey, you've been attending a children's parliament in Somerset. Did the terrorist attacks come up at all in your children's parliament?
No, they didn't. But what was interesting was when I asked people, what is a democracy, what is a parliament, the answers were just really illuminating. It was answers focusing on everybody's right to have a say, the freedom to have a say.
Ruth Fox, how important are events like children's parliament, do you think, in explaining the role of democracy?
Enormously important, because we know that public knowledge and understanding of Parliament, what it is, what it does, its relationship with government, is not as high as we would like it. And Parliament itself has a fantastic outreach and education programme. It's got an education centre that will be able to facilitate about 100,000 school visits a year. And it's important citizenship education so that young people, as they grow into adults and take on their voting responsibilities at 18, that they understand how our democracy works.
And James Heappey, finally, would you regret it if this week's attacks led to more barriers being put up between people and Parliament?
Well, I think there's a very difficult balance to strike. I think that the security around Parliament is quite good, but in my opinion there are some areas where Parliament is vulnerable because we do live by quite a strict routine. The skill is to deliver the security that is required to keep Parliament safe, whilst making sure, as Ruth quite rightly says, that Parliament remains as accessible as possible.
James Heappey and Ruth Fox.